US President Donald Trump yesterday said India will charge zero tariff on US goods and also took a jibe on Apple CEO Tim Cook, chiding him to discontinue with his plans to make iPhones in India. This comes in the wake of Trump's mission of making America great again by bringing manufacturing to the US. His tariff policy has been nothing short of arm-twisting tactics. The trade war with China has ebbed, but both countries are conceding some ground and hoping to work out a deal in 90 days or so. Trump's statement on India's zero tariff has no official confirmation, and his message to Tim Cook to not make in India, or China for that matter, may just be another one of his off-the-cuff remarks distant from ground reality. Let's listen in first to what he said before we bring in our guests on the show today.
It's very hard to sell into India. And they've offered us a deal where basically they're willing to literally charge us no tariff.
Well, that's Donald Trump saying that India has agreed to charge no tariffs on US goods. Well, Srinath Sridharan and Barnik Chitran Metra join me this morning. Srinath, let me begin with you. And first, let's just stick to tariffs before we come to what he said to Tim Cook. Now, on tariffs, zero tariff on US goods. Where does that really come from, Srinath?
I think it's a US wish list. I don't think it has been on the Indian radar or table at all for a very, very long time. I would be very aghast if Indian government actually goes ahead and proposes zero draft tariffs. That's one. Two, I think we must also look at the Trump's, not only the statements around tariffs, but he claimed credit for the ceasefire, the India-Pakistan ceasefire.
Yeah.
And also, I think there is a lesson for the Indian diplomacy that the posturing or the perception management seems to be the new geopolitical reality. And it is coming in light of what the Indian delegation is supposed to fly to the US tonight. And it is a direct message saying, this is what I'm expecting. And it's more like a bargaining deal, negotiation. He set the first rule saying that this is what I expect. So I think he's using optics completely. And I think if you look at a lot of his statements are not actually coming on the official US statements. It actually comes on Truth Social first, and then he gets widely disseminated. Right, but absolutely. In effect, I think he's posturing. He's doing the big bully or the big brother style. And I think India has to learn to call off a lot of these claims. I mean, we have been very, very, I think, soft when it comes to some of this, considering, of course, the larger political narrative also, large Indian diaspora, visa, so many things that I think Indian political balance would be needed. But I don't think this zero tariff is ever on the table.
Right. Zero tariff doesn't seem to be on the table, at least that's what we are hearing. And Barnik, this also comes at a time when we have Piyush Goyal leading a trade delegation to Washington. As we speak, the contours of the bilateral trade agreement are yet to be frozen. So where is this whole narrative of zero tariff really coming from?
I think the narrative comes from Trump's wish list of having zero tariffs and claiming victory in the trade war. Now, let's be clear how these trade deals work, right? So you typically will have a basket of goods on which there will be a negotiated tariff from both sides. So there will be a list where India will concede to some of the Americans' request to reduce tariffs or make them zero. And similarly, the Americans have to reciprocate by giving zero tariffs on similar items which India exports to the US. So if you look at the current trade with the US, I think the only things we effectively import from the US are petroleum products, oil, and maybe some machinery, right? Whereas we export a lot more to the US in terms of pharmaceuticals, garments, gemstones. So again, let's see how this pans out. I think we will have to also give a little to ensure that there is a visible victory for the Americans on the trade deal. But what I'm very positive about, given the speed with which he executed the trade deal with the UK, which if you look at the substance of the deal, was not really that substantive. We will have some trade deal done in the next 90 to 120 days, and there will be some notional concessions given by the Indians to the Americans in return for us to continue export significantly to the US.
All right. Srinath, let me come back to you now. Hypothetically, if India does go ahead and agree to zero tariff or near about zero tariff, much lower than what India charges right now, what's the likely impact on the Indian industry? And I'm talking about sectors like auto, for example, agriculture, dairy. What happens to these sectors if India was to drastically cut down tariffs on US goods?
Yeah, I think the first one, the automobiles, would be kind of a setback economically. But more importantly, agri is a political flashpoint to the narrative could far well become political and offensive, saying that India, the government has kind of given in to a Western power and done a trade deal. So I don't think the government is going to give in very quickly to at least the politically sensitive agriculture. But automobile, I think at some point in time, we'll have to balance being competitive vis-a-vis China. That's where I want to bring in Trump's statement about telling Apple not to increase manufacturing base in
Right.
India.